what's going on, buddy? Feels like Dad's home.
No.
I mean, he's not home.
Or should we do the old yo?
Yeah.
Welcome to the All or Nothing Show. Today, there's no Austin.
It's a special episode.
It is a special episode. So, we have, one, it's just me and Griffin. So, follow us on Instagram, Brock Griffin, Fake Griffin. And two, we got some new drinks.
Yep.
And three, last podcast, if you didn't listen to it, we got new mics, so you should notice there's a sound improvement from previous podcasts, but also the cameras. If you're not watching on YouTube, you should go check it out. We're kind of testing out a new camera angle and setup and everything, so Griffin's got both his cameras angled at us, set up, rock and roll, good to go. So hopefully it's looking super clean, super professional.
I don't know about you, but sometimes whenever I first hit the button, I'm like, did I hit the button?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe let me go check.
Well, because like
again.
the chance of like recording 20 minutes and then looking and it just say like 00
yeah.
on like the time
So
code,
let me
you're
just
like,
get it out of my head
Yeah,
really quick.
yeah.
And then we'll crack the drinks.
That's fine. So I'll tell you a little bit about the drinks. And you might want to tilt your mic a little bit too so it doesn't tip. It looks kind of angled funny. But anyway, a little bit about the drinks, people. Bucked Up Energy. So we had one last week. Was it last week we did the Rocket Pop? 2 weeks ago. Anyway, recently we did the Rocket Pop, which is very good. I liked it a lot. Maddie probably is going to shit on it on Instagram. But I really like the Bucked Up Energy. I feel like it's like a moderate carbonation. The flavors seem like not out of the box, but not super boring. And so this one is a Wild Orchard, which everyone has had except I've had a sip, but I haven't really had a full drink of it. And so a little background is a apple cider, but it's like a green apple cider. So it's got a little bit of like a sour kind of zip to it. So I feel like I'm going to rate this one high. But
yeah, I had mentioned it, I feel like, on another show before because I tried it in a Gold's and I haven't found it in any vitamin shop, so I'm glad you found it on Europa. But it's definitely a unique apple flavor, probably my favorite kind of apple flavor for any energy
And I like Bucked Up because I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm like hyping them up and it's a small amount, but I like that they have the alpha size for focus and the tea cream for, again, like focus and energy, and they have like a little bit more ingredients in it than just, hey, it's just caffeine. You know? And I feel like when I see the prices of like a 3D and then this, I'm like, you know, it's probably like an extra quarter for a Bucked Up or like a Raise, but I feel like both those drinks pack a little bit more ingredients, you know. So,
would you use it as pre-workout or just an energy drink with a little extra?
I don't like energy drinks for pre-workout because I like the pump aspect just as much as the energy when I take pre-workout. But I'd crush one for like a run or if I needed to, needed a little pick me up.
Absolutely.
So let's crack them.
Cheers, my friend.
I know.
Austin, I wish you were seeing this. I wish
I
you
know
were
he's gonna listen to
experiencing this with us.
He's probably like, oh God, what are they gonna say? What are they gonna do?
Let's see.
I know.
Little
God, that one's good.
It is.
It reminds me of like a Bold Rock, but I've never had a Bold Rock.
Yeah.
Like that's what I imagine it would taste like if you took the alcohol out of a Bold Rock and you were like, here you go. I feel like this is like the spiced up apple juice, you know.
I was telling Maddie, I feel like it tastes fuzzy to me. There's like an interesting fuzzy taste, you know.
And it's right on the borderline of like, ooh, this could go the perfume route, you know, like taste. But then it's like you're getting like right to the edge of that, and then it turns back. And you're like, no, it's actually not too artificial or perfumey. We'll kind of not take too long on the drinks. What are you thinking?
I like it. I think it's very good. I would say like 8.4. Yeah.
8.4. Nice. Okay.
So,
man,
dang.
Already
does it feel
alike.
weird? Like I feel like usually we're the assistants to
and
Austin.
we usually
He's
sit
the leader.
side by side, so I never really like even when I'm talking, I never really look at you.
Yeah.
Because I know like my voice will go the opposite direction. So now it's like it's more intimate.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. That's true.
But yeah. So we're not gonna go super, I think, into like as much fitness now because I feel like we have like free range.
Yeah. Do we want to do topics and then questions first? Because we both asked some questions. There were some interesting questions from the audience.
Yeah, the questions weren't that great, but we'll still, I guess, answer them and see kind of where we go with them.
Yeah.
And but now we can kick off some topics that me and Griffin both wrote down a few. I don't know, random thoughts we have. I feel like we're both. I don't know. Both of our minds kind of run wild on some ideas and topics generally. So now I feel like we can kind of expand what we normally talk about to ourselves or over text kind of onto the podcast. So
I don't know. It is funny sometimes because I feel like a lot of times on the podcast some weeks are harder to find topics than others.
For sure.
But then I feel like sometimes when we're just casually talking or driving around, it's like,
we should
have recorded that. I know. So the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was, since I was starting to work with Wesley, it's a weird thing, and it's kind of two things I wanted to mention. One, I feel like a lot of times now it's a weird feeling to think about, okay, well, this isn't like if I like it, if I don't, it's just like I'm gonna do this regardless of like, oh well, if I have a long day, like I'm still gonna eat all my meals, or like plan ahead. It's weird too, because now I'm thinking about like my split a little bit more, or like meals at a certain time, whereas before I'm just kind of like, oh, it's whatever, and like I'll try to get it done regardless. But it's weird to me to think about now, like, oh, I could have done that all along, you know, but I just don't really take it as seriously, I guess, sometimes when it's me being in charge. So I was kind of curious for you, in regards to business or fitness or other things like that, like the concept of being a leader, or like being your own leader and creating your responsibilities rather than just like following orders.
I don't know. I think it's interesting because, like, I don't know, a couple things ran through my head. The first thought I had, like, just completely left my mind. But it was kind of centered around, like, I guess the fact that, I don't know, it's like you have to actually answer to someone now, and so you don't, like, want to waste your money that you just spent on these things. And like you said, it's like the things, it's like you can always do these things. It's like the people that go to these conferences, right, where it's like, you're going to 10x your business. I'm going to teach you the skills. Come to this weekend seminar. And it's like all these things are mostly like rah-rah, and it's like you could have, like, known this yourself. Or a lot of these books, like The Simple Edge, it's like basically just telling you like work hard and do something different, you know? And it's like, oh, okay, now I'll do something different. It's like, I don't know. But I think
there's value in that, though. Like,
sometimes
I know
you need
it's a little bit
switch to
goofy,
flip.
but like some things I just think, if it changes your mindset, if it changes your attitude or your behavior, like, you can't really put a price on that.
When sometimes it takes a couple times. Like when I first started lifting, it wasn't like as soon as I watch like this YouTuber, now I'm locked in. It took years of hearing the same thing over and over from Chris Jones, from Mark Lobliner, from Matt Ogus. It took years of like hammering these points home to where it's now I'm like, you know, I remember like when I was 16, 17 working out, and I'm like, I don't care that it's cold white rice and chicken at school for lunch. Like it takes like, you know, years of kind of just beating that over your head. And as far as like creating, what was the thing? Being a leader and like creating these responsibilities in your life, right?
It's almost like if you were to give me like a checklist of stuff to do at the end of the night for the gym, and I could follow that and do it all to the best of my ability. But I feel like if I didn't have that guidance or something like that, like let's say, well, that's probably a bad example for cleaning, but for business related stuff, like you probably needed to figure out what you needed to do to be able to open the gym. Do you feel like it would have been easier to have somebody tell you what you needed to do and follow that? Or was it kind of better for you to create it on your own and then try to do it? Like, does it, that's
I got it. I think
and also like in regards to time frame, like does it ever feel like, and in regards to making the stuff available to you for the gym and for, it's hard to articulate. It's like,
I know what
you knew what you needed to do to open the gym, then is it hard to have that timeline, or is it like, do you take it seriously when it's yourself versus somebody else?
Before you ramble too much and I lose my thoughts, because I'm like, I almost lost it again. I was like trying to hold on. Damn. So what I'm thinking is like, you give yourself slack when you create like the checklist, you know? So like I was rambling to you, and this won't be a shock because I texted Maddie about it, but it's like when she made like a closing checklist, right? She closed every night. And I told you, it's like sometimes, you know, I come in the morning, a few things aren't done. And it's tiny things. It's not like that serious, but it might be like, oh, like the free weight room, like left the heat on or something like that. It's nothing like dramatic, but it's kind of like when you set these responsibilities, like you said, for yourself, you give yourself slack because like we talked about, I think on the last podcast with your program, it's like sometimes you're like, well, I've had a long day, so it's okay if I skip this meal, or you understand your situation, and sometimes it's better to have someone else not understand your situation.
Yeah.
And that might give them less insight to really what's going on, but in some ways it kind of pushes you to be better.
Yeah,
you know?
It's interesting because I was just thinking about that yesterday of like just making time for things, and it's like, oh, I've had that time all along. And it's not saying like, for instance, for that, it's interesting that you can just turn that off. Like a lot of times I feel like, oh, it's going to take me a while, or like, oh, I got to do this, this, and this. But it's interesting now that somebody else is doing it or like overseeing it. It makes me feel like, oh, well, it's non-negotiable now. And it's weird because same kind of thing as we were mentioning before, some of those conferences or something like that. It's weird for me to be like, oh, I could have done that all along. And there was a time where I did do that. And I don't know how it kind of got away from me, but it feels good to like just feel like it's automated, or it's kind of like robotic now. It's kind of just procedure that needs to be followed.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like you almost got to make yourself or treat yourself like a robot or like a coding system where it's like input and output, and there is no emotion. I think emotion is like what makes us human, but I also think it's like gives us our faults, and it gives us our like we have error. We have like so much human error because of like emotion. So it's like we give ourselves too much empathy and sympathy when the work just needs to be done anyway. And so I think people do that when they feel tired or they feel upset with the image they see in the mirror. It's like they cut themselves too much slack instead of just facing like the truth, because the truth is ugly sometimes. Yeah. So I think that's generally it. But as far as like creating responsibilities and being like a leader, it's like, I don't know. It's like, it sounds so simple, but it's like, if you're not going to do it, who's going to do it for you, kind of thing. So it's like, you either got to have those systems in place to like make sure you knock something out yourself and that you have that control in your life, or else, you got to do like you did, like hire a coach. Yeah, that goes for temporary time. And, when you have to answer to someone, I think you kick into a different gear. Yeah,
it's interesting. And I was thinking about that in regards to, too, I have a friend who is a trainer at Crunch, and he was saying that, oh, I've been like sucking with my lifts and like I need to get my eating better, but I'm not making as much money because like my manager only gives me a 1 time a week client. And it's so weird to feel like I know what that feels like, because I've kind of been in a similar situation, and how much growth has happened just from like taking an inadvertent leap from like not being able to work at Gold's anymore. Mm-hmm. But now how many doors have opened up working here, having like a great day every day, looking forward to work, like making my own work for me through you and with Austin or other people like that. But it's interesting just to think of, like, if you were in that mindset of, oh, I can't do this because I can't do this because someone else isn't letting me do this. It's weird to not just be able to think of like, oh, well, why can't I make more for myself?
It's so simple to say, but it's almost like as simple as there's nothing to it but to do it.
Yeah, and that's true.
I heard that in a caption like weeks ago, and I was like, that is so true. I mean,
I certainly think that's an old WWE
It's
quote.
Definitely an old saying, but it's obviously so easy and applicable to like workouts, right? Like you got to run, you got to work out, ain't nothing to it but to do it. But same deal with like, God, I just hate hearing people complain, well, I can't get to the gym because of this, or I can't grow my business because of this, or or it's, oh, it's easy for you to get your workout done because, you work at a gym or this or that. You have the flexibility. Or someone would say to you like, oh, well, it's easier for you because you don't work at Gold's anymore, you freelance. Well, it's like, how did I get to this position? Because of the decisions I made. And sometimes you just need to, stop complaining and just freaking do it. Because because you're just running circles with these complaints and these excuses and things like that. And, someone will bring up, oh, well, I got this, and that. And that might be true, but there's always somebody working harder than you in a worse scenario. There's always someone in like a worse situation that they overcame and got past. It's kind of like the whole privilege thing, which we don't need to get into. But it's like, there's always someone, that had a single parent that's poor and still kind of, became something. It's not like an excuse that your situation or whatever you're dealing with isn't valid. Yeah. But it's saying that I doubt you're giving a full 100%. If my back was to the wall and like, the freelance work I do went out the door, I do whatever it takes because that's the only other option. It's sink or swim. It's either I'm going to Uber Eat and I'm going to like do all these different
Pick up a
services.
tool.
I'll fucking mow grass, whatever I got to do. Yeah, I'll pick up a tool and work. Before I just sink there and complain and say, oh, well, it's because coronavirus, or oh, it's because, whatever. It's like that gets me nowhere. And yet I don't understand why these things are just accepted. And it's just,
Do you think that people need like a comparison to be able to have something to like work against almost? Like, let's say you were doing a show.
You mean like a role model, like someone to compare to as far as their situation?
No, let's say like, for example, you were prepping for a show and you could take it easy for certain things. You could slack on certain things. But if you knew in your head that somebody else is training for that same show and you have to beat them, like, do you almost need that avatar or something in your head?
I do, and it's almost like that's almost like what I lived through, but not like one specific comparison. But it's kind of like I said on podcast weeks ago, where it's like I personally feed off like negativity and negative energy. I think just because I dealt with a lot of like he said, she said type shit, I guess, in like middle school or high school.
Yeah.
And so it's like, even when no one's even said anything like, talking shit about the gym or about my fitness like directly or on Instagram, I almost think like, oh, let's hear what they say about like this run, or like let them talk now whenever this gym is open or whatever. It's like, I almost kind of like, I do compare in a sense, not to like, I don't know. I hold myself to like really high standards. And so I am kind of always working towards something. I'm always kind of telling myself that whatever I've done is not good enough. Yeah. And that it's just like a stepping stone. And it's not like from a place of like self-hatred or depression. I think that's where like, me saying that for me, it works. For someone else, it could like destroy them.
Well, it's interesting to have that attitude, but within that kind of frame too.
Yeah.
Like it's not good enough, but it's not like you hate yourself.
Yeah. It's all, I think it's just like our physique. It's like, I think you and I would both look at our physiques in the mirror. We do it all the time. We're like, fat here, or this is small. And it's like, but then the average person would be like, you look phenomenal. You're like 0.1% of the population. And it's like true, but it's like you always see like where you can improve, and it's not from a place of like body dysmorphia in like a hatred way, or like I'm upset. I'm never like crying at home like thinking about being bulimic, but at the same time it's like I just constantly want to get better and be better. And I'm never in a state of like complacency.
Do you think that you need to carry that attitude over into other things? Like I find that when it comes to certain things, I'm like very critical or very like perfectionist, but then other things I'm like let's say for example keeping a clean car, it's like I don't know, I don't care about that. But do you feel like you kind of need to carry that attitude into other things? Or
I think over time I've done a better job at doing it, so I don't want to sound like I'm Mr. Perfect and there's no like place I don't apply that, because I'm sure there is. There's definitely places where I'm more lazy or slack off or things like that, but I think I've done a good job at taking it. All started with like fitness, right? And like not missing a workout, eating right, trying to do these things to a T. And then like once I got to like either the freelance work I do or running hour or the business, it's kind of like it just goes back in like a circle with like the non-negotiables, right? And what we just talked about with creating these responsibilities, because it's like you have to do these things for yourself because you want to be better. So it has to come from like within, and I think I do a pretty good job at just slipped my mind.
Oh.
What were you talking about?
We were talking about carrying over that attitude into like,
but what attitude? What's the attitude?
Oh, like being a perfectionist almost. Like wanting to do the best, like as far as impression.
Man.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's gone. But you got me started on impression now. So what do you how do you interpret like a first impression? Because I have like a different kind of avenue I go with it, but I'll let you kind of kick off that topic.
Oh, well, I was kind of curious about that just because I feel like it's been something I've kind of come into more as time has gone on. Of like, I used to be a lot more. It is interesting kind of under that framing, because I feel like I used to be a lot more sensitive to what other people thought. And then it was something I kind of grew through of like, oh, well, I don't care, basically. But then I feel like in that same vein, you then start to kind of be sloppy in a sense, and then caring or beginning to care or grow into caring more about like creating a good impression or keeping yourself up, if that makes sense, rather than it's hard to articulate, but basically, like, let's say, for example, let's say for the gym, you were sensitive to what people think about, like, oh, they say that this machine is like off, or they say that this like seat is split or something like that. And it got in your head. And then after a while, you're like, I don't care what they think. But then you started to let like the gym get dirty or other things like that. You don't care what they think. But then also figuring out like internally, why is it important to keep up appearances or keep a good impression, or like, let's say, for example, like keep up your grooming or hygiene or other things like that. And it's interesting to me sometimes because I feel like with anything, thinking, let's just say for this podcast and stuff, like I want, if people tune in, I want them to have the best first experience they can. Yeah. And then that kind of like carries over in terms of, are you going to keep listening to it? Like, what else do you find that you kind of glean from that? As far as like, I like the Fuad podcast. Yeah. And through that, I know that he has a supplement company. Yeah. But if I didn't have a good first impression of the podcast, I would never have listened to it again. That,
So I have a good, like, before I lose it again.
Yeah. Something about the cameras being on.
We both go on. I know. I feel like we get nervous, and we both go on monologues. And usually it's like not just you and me back and forth, but now
but
it is.
It's weird because we always have a camera on,
That is true, but it's usually a shitty Android.
Yeah. And I think Austin is like, if I look at him and he's just like nods,
he just nods.
Like, okay,
I'm doing good.
Relaxing. Yeah.
No, all right. So when I played baseball growing up, we would go to different fields like in Myrtle Beach while we were there, and we'd like, batting practice, like, just while we were on vacation or something. And he used to always tell me like, hey, like, don't act like a brat or like quit acting like rude or slacking off because you never know who's watching.
Yeah.
And I used to always be like, we're in like Myrtle Beach, like it doesn't matter. Like, there's no one around here. But one day, there was some, not like a big scout or anything, but it was just some like coach of a travel team that was in Myrtle Beach. And they're like, hey, like, I see, he's hitting well or whatever. It's like, what's his age? How often are y'all here? He might be like, he could be a great fill-in whenever y'all are in town. And so it's kind of like how you act and present yourself is so overlooked, I think. And it's easy, like you said, to just kind of neglect and be like, who cares what people think? I'm confident in myself.
Yeah.
But I think it's such a fine line, because it's like you want to not care what people think, but how people think about you has a vast impact on your life. Yeah. More than you realize. For example, like a big change I've made and worked with you when we do photos is when people immediately get to my Instagram, what do they think? Yeah. Who do they think I am? What words do they associate? What kind of emotions do my posts give them? And how can a brand, associate themselves with me? And I think that's super important. It goes back to how we've been working with Gymflo and making sure that when people go to the account, they don't get this, oh, it's just slapped together kind of thing. Whether it's a podcast, whether it's posts on Instagram, whether it's the products. Because like the product can be phenomenal. I think, All or Nothing, the Lime label, everything about the product itself, killer. Yeah. I think the formula's great, feels great, tastes great. The labels are sweet now. The more and more we work on them, they like come out amazing. But if like no one gives it a chance because the website is faulty or there's a bunch of pop-ups or they get confused, it's like you lost them. It's like the story with T-Pump, right? And so I think people's first impression is so critical to how they interpret you as an individual, your brand, your website, whatever you do.
Yeah, that is interesting to think too, because it's almost like, in regards to Gymflo, with something like that, it's interesting to see, like, we know how great it is and how many people could miss out on that because they just like overlook it or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or in regards to like the gym or for like training, I always want with clients to always like leave a good taste in their mouth and not make somebody feel like, should I try a better option? Should I try to like look for somebody else? Like it's always, I feel like, better to kind of go above and beyond and trying to just, I don't know.
No, it's super important with people. It's like if your client, the first time you meet them, you're late, and then you're in a bad mood and you're monotone, you're not smiling. it's like they're gonna be like, damn, I don't really want to work with this dude.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a good time. Even if every other day, it's gonna be a lot better. They don't know that. They just know like that first impression of you. And so it's so critical in your conversations and your smile, how you keep yourself, like you mentioned, your hygiene, because they don't, it's there's so many subconscious things too that we're thinking about.
That's true.
Like, how your hair, how you look, what you're wearing.
Yeah.
And people, so quickly will make judgments off you just based off, what you're wearing. If you're wearing an American flag shirt, they might think, okay, he's going to be conservative. He's probably from the South. He thinks this, and that.
That's a good point.
Especially
like when I had long hair, everybody would always ask where they could buy weed.
Yeah,
and
well, you kind
of I have no idea.
And whether your hair is straight, whether it's wavy, whether it's curly, whether it's man bun, whether it's down, I'm sure that changed like how people interpreted you, how attractive you might have been to women, whether it was in a man bun or whether it was down. Yeah. So it just changes things.
It's interesting too. Like as far as the gym goes. Like, what have you been thinking about in regards to aesthetics or, like, placement of things or, like, the image you want to convey compared to, like, a Planet Fitness, compared to a Gold's or something like that? Like, when people first walk in, what did you want them to think about or pull from to create that impression of, like, the kind of gym you wanted?
So with the gym, that was, like, the biggest thing I know I talked about while we were opening was like customer experience, right? Because we're not going to have a shit ton of machines. We're not going to have like the newest facility, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it was like, how can we nail people's experience in here? And so, making sure that when we painted things, lines were great. I mean, my dad basically took care of that because he's like even way more anal than I am about it. And, when you're younger, a lot of the things that he taught me or the things that he said, it's like I thought he's a complete prick.
Yeah.
But then I grew up to value those things like just as much or more than him now. Gotta get a shaky voice. I feel like it's cold in the caffeine.
I get the voice crack with the drink.
I know.
You get the shaky voice.
But yeah, so that was a big thing. So making sure like everything looks crisp in here. Details as small as like the outlets. Just like we changed the outlet plates to black so it blends in the wall. It's like you don't even think about that, but when people are in here, everything just looks a lot cleaner. They don't think that they're in a rinky-dink startup gym. They think, oh, I'm in like this is a nice gym. And that's what people tell me when they're in here. They're like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be like this. I've heard like people say that.
Do you ever feel like, because I'm thinking about when you say that, do you ever feel like you carry more from your first impression, like positive, interesting things, or negative, like things that stand out to you? Like, for example, my first time going into 1111, I remember, I don't really even remember like the machines or equipment, but I remember the first time I went in, the guy at the front desk was like, oh, I don't feel like getting out the credit card reader, so like just train for free. And then I started to train, and then like the cable broke off of the cable tower, and it was just like, what is going on here? Like, I would have given them money, but then as soon as I left, I was like, I don't want to be a member there,
Yeah.
And no disrespect, I don't know if they're still around or not, but it's like, it's interesting to where that could have been a really cool, like, more hardcore bodybuilding gym, but I just didn't come away with it.
I think for most people, it's got to be like, it's not like you go in pulling like the pro or con. I think it really just depends on like, either it's a mix of, okay, well, there's more pros and cons, so you take away a good experience, or sometimes it might be mainly pros, but you have such a big con, or vice versa, that it outweighs. So I think there's that. Oh, man, there was one more thing about the gym I wanted to say. First impressions.
As far as
details.
Something good, something bad.
And it's gone. But no, one thing I do want to talk about, there was we've been talking about like what people think of us.
Yeah.
But what about like first impression when how do you interpret people? Because for me, I feel like I said this to you yesterday, I feel like over the years I've grown more judgmental, more cutthroat with people. Yeah. And I think it's because I just am so picky and choosy on who I invest my personal time and thoughts and energy into. Both in like people and in hobbies, because it's like, I'm young, I have so much time, but you waste your time with some people. It's like I hear people talk about, oh, this crazy ex I spent 2 years with, and it's like the whole 2 years of their life was like wasted. I don't want that. I don't want that with a friend. I don't want that with a business. And so it's like, how can I maximize these relationships. And it's like we talked about before in an older podcast. It's like it doesn't have to be I'm friends with you because you take good photos of me.
Yeah.
And that's it. It has to be kind of like more than that. It has to be values. It has to be, you're a productive member of like society and like a productive person in general. And I am too. And so we kind of feed off energies. It's like we talked about last week, to where it's like I get things from you, you get things from me, we get things from Austin, and vice versa. So how are you when you meet somebody? Or do you kind of give them a second chance, or like how important is that kind of first conversation with them? Because I know when I have conversations with people, it's kind of like I quickly know within like 5-10 minutes, like, do they have it's not like are they dumb or are they smart kind of thing, but it's like are they a bigger thinker and they're gonna push me and I'm gonna be able to push them to kind of to challenge themselves. It's kind of like we talked about earlier with creating responsibilities. Like, are they a doer or are they just like a passive person? I can quickly tell you that within like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. With that, it's interesting because I feel like I'm friendly with a lot of people, but I don't really have too many close friends. I'll probably say I have like 3-4 maybe.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's kind of frustrating sometimes to look back on friendships or like coworkers or other things like that, that I feel like I had so many times that I would stay late at jobs to just hang out because I was like, oh, these are my like friends, like, we get along so well at work or other things like that. And I think it's good for the time. But then looking back sometimes, and it's like, man, I spent a lot of time with people who I haven't talked to in years or like don't keep up with or think about. And I feel like a lot of times too with friends, you have different people that like know different sides of you. So for example, I have some like hiking friends or like guitar friends or lifting friends, but the ones that I feel like mesh in multiple areas are the ones that I'm a lot closer with.
Yeah.
And the other frustrating thing is figuring out people that will like reciprocate, I guess, to where a lot of times we've talked about this before, but like you think that, oh, like they're really nice. And then they ask you if you want to work out. And then it's like, oh, well, can you bring your camera too? And it's like, okay, well, I know why we're hanging out basically. Yeah. So it's frustrating to sometimes find people that also give as well as like you can give too.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I would say, since I spend a lot of time alone, like there are only a few people that I feel like I enjoy being around more than being alone.
Well, we talked about it before. Sometimes you catch up with an old friend, and then 10 minutes into it, you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I've got my fill.
Yeah, and I feel like you do it more than others just because, like you said, you're almost too friendly to a fault in some ways. And, and I've maybe I'm just a fucking asshole. I push Maddie almost to that way too. It's where it's like she had a lot of I feel like
alienate everyone.
Friends coming out. I know. Yeah, you can't have friends, only me.
Yeah.
But she had like a lot of friends coming out of high school, and then quickly realized like, oh, they actually don't like me. They make jokes about me or this or that. Yeah. It's like they're just time suckers, right? It's like you said, like you might have a good time in the moment, but then if you look at it like over time, it's like you're not really getting anything out of that relationship. And when I first think about it, I'm like, oh, like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be like I give this and then I get that.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of does. I think, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like having like a mutual benefit to where you both are enjoying and valuing and getting something out of a relationship. Because if I was owning the gym and training, doing this and that, and you were just kind of like stopping by and just hanging out in the office and just, I'd kind of be like, I'm not enjoying this friendship because you're just kind of like, almost like a leech.
Yeah, a freeloader.
Yeah. It's not that you're a bad person,
yeah,
but it's almost like it's like a leeching activity, And I feel like that's what a lot of people do to each other.
Yeah. And, gosh, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say in regards to that.
But I think more people need to like take that advice and really examine their friendships. And
that's what it was. So I feel like a lot of times I've had friends that like, and this is nothing bad, I think a lot of people are this
Fuck
way.
You, Dave? No.
Yeah. Well, it's like they'll say, I miss you, haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, miss you too, sort of thing. And then when we go to hang out, it's like we're not really doing anything, we're not talking about anything. It's almost like, you go to a dinner, you go do something. Or like people that, I don't know if you ever have this, because we usually talk pretty regularly, but like people that just text you and it's like, what am I supposed to say to that? Like, you know, it's almost like some people just need that padding of like, I need somebody to hang out with. I need somebody to talk to or to send this meme to. And I remember one of my friends a couple of years ago, like I was doing a lot of stuff where I'll go different places or like shoot photos, and he's like, you drove all the way to like the DC Zoo, spent the day there just by yourself, like, you know, that you didn't want anyone to come with you. And it's like, you know, I don't really, if somebody wants to come, great, but it's like I don't need somebody to like do things with, you know
what's I think a big problem in society, and I think it's something that we both in very different upbringings but almost ended up in the same place, is maybe you less than me, but maybe you can tell me I'm wrong, is I had a lot of alone time growing up. And I think
I was the only kid in my neighborhood, so like, I had a tree house.
I just wonder how much you spent with your brother. I didn't know if there was much time or different age groups or...
We did a lot together, but as a kid, he was like, I was the one that would just be on the computer or drawing, and he would be like playing sports or like being active.
Basically like inverse for me and my brother. So he was more of a musician, doing his own thing. He's a little bit older, I think, too, than you and your brother, like gap, but generally same concept where it's like I'm doing one thing, he's doing another. So like basically late elementary school and onward, it was just me, and I had some friends or kids in the neighborhood, but I wasn't really friends with them. Or they weren't that close, or different interests. And so it's like I spent so much time alone that, you know, I didn't come out of it isolated. I think in some ways I might have struggled socially, like in conversations with like brand new people and things like that. But I think it's such a valuable trait is being comfortable being alone. And
absolutely.
I think, you know, you and I both have that, and I think a lot of people... not that like we're better than other people, but a lot of people don't have that, and it's very important, because when you are alone, whether I'm sure you know people that have to be in a relationship to be happy, and so they're always leaning on that person, or they need to be around that friend, or they have to be like doing something. When it's like I can like sit in isolation, read a book, go to the zoo on my own, you know, like you said, and it's like I can be content and be happy, and it's like, am I happier when I'm around people? Sure, depending on the people. It's not, but I'm happy either or. It's not like I'm only happy when I'm around people, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's not to their fault. Some people, you know, are raised around a lot of friends, and that's great. But then when they don't have those friends, when they go to college and they're not around the same people, or they lose friends, or they lose a girlfriend, boyfriend, and it's like, oh fuck, I don't know how to just be myself and be alone.
Well, think about like how much stimulation is in day-to-day life of, you know, people don't really have to be alone with their own thoughts. Like when you're driving home, you put music on, you put a podcast on. Like if you're at home, you can just pull out your phone and then post something or interact with other people, or like have the TV on or other things like that.
A lot of distractions.
I feel like for that reason, people don't really like get to know themselves sometimes, or like deal with things that they're going through, and instead just try to like pretend it's not there, cover it up, or like do something else.
The
or
moments that
themselves.
They have to, that's where they start feeling this anxiety and this discomfort. And I'm not a psychiatrist or whatever, looking at the camera, but it's like I'm not like a psychiatrist. So you know, depression, anxiety is real. But what I'm saying is a lot of these like emotions that people are experiencing, maybe they almost they either misinterpret or they heighten, because like we mentioned, they aren't used to having these internal dialogues.
It's kind of like what I was telling you about. I think I told you about this a long time ago, but like I used to always be on the computer and then just be looking up like how to be more productive, and it's like, you know, just turn off the computer, just do something. And it's like, I just think that a lot of people, you never really get that like split second decision of, you know, just do this, don't do this, where it's always like, you know, I need to be like cleaning this up, I need to deal with how I'm going to make more money or find a new job, and then it's like, all right, well, like, you know, you get this reflex, pull something else. So it's interesting because I often find I love, like if I go on a camping trip or something, I love going on that drive that I know is going to be like 2 or 3 hours, and then just like kind of cruising and letting your mind just unravel things, or like going on a hike alone or something like that. It's really nice to just take a walk, like be around like pretty much silence, and then you'll be surprised how much you kind of just work through without thinking about it, and kind of the paths that your thought process goes down.
It's kind of like yoga. It's kind of like you're not supposed to think of anything specifically, but just let your mind wander.
Yeah.
And be comfortable in that. Don't like stress it. Don't feel like I have to clear my mind. I have to do this and that. If you can't clear your mind, if you got things to think about, that's okay. But just like kind of like letting go.
Yeah.
But another topic I wanted to dive into. Let me look at the whiteboard real quick.
Yeah, sure.
So another topic I was thinking about was like respect, because I just, again, going back to like my dad, one thing he was always talking about was like respect. And I think it's something that's so interesting, because I think it's something that's been forgotten or overlooked over like the past decade or two. As simple as being raised to say sir and ma'am to people that are older than you, or to your whoever's the authority in the room, the teacher, the boss, the whatever it is, your friend's parent. You know, just I think those little things are almost forgotten, to where it's like, a lot of kids nowadays, you look at these millennial parents, it's like the kids own the parents.
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
they like run them around. And I think, a society that disregards respect, especially respect for authority or for elders, is almost like an anarchy, where it's just chaos. There's no like, there's no like system or law and order in place. And I think you see that with these kids that just run over their parents and like, go ahead, like, take my phone, I'll just take it back. Or and then you just have no control.
Well, it's interesting with that, because as a kid, I was always brought up to like, I still, without realizing it, say yes sir, yes ma'am sort of thing to everybody that I feel like is older than me or like in a higher position. And it's weird to kind of think about like how that's almost ingrained, but then also as a kid, like the juxtaposition between me and my brother.
Yeah.
If I like talk back or anything like that, my dad would like take my Game Boy, put it on the ground, give me a hammer, and be like, you're going to smash this right now because you talk back, or something like that. And then right as I'm about to raise the hammer, he'll be like, did you learn your lesson? Or other things like that, to where it's almost like a psychological thing.
Yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, man, like that
it's
really
valuable,
pushed that into me. Whereas my brother, my dad was a little bit more lenient after my parents divorced, to where when my dad would be like, Landon, you need to do your dishes, Landon would be like, F you, Tom.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It's interesting to just see like the callousness difference, or like just the general like persona, where, it's not saying he's a bad person or anything like that, but just that became lost. And then I think that adversely affected his relationships with like bosses or other people that were like a more authoritative figure in his life later on.
Yeah, I feel like there's just so many different avenues I could go with this, but I think it's just like, without that system of like you said, to where it's a little bit of psychological warfare, where it's like, you have to have a consequence for your action, right?
Yeah.
And so I think
I think it kind of goes into like,
because otherwise you never learn anything. You never learn how you should act.
If you feel like nothing matters, then you're going to act that same way. Impulse. To where like, if nothing matters, we're all going to die anyway. Like, am I going to get into debt? Like anything that kind of makes your quality of life go down, you don't really care about, basically.
Yeah,
and I think that that's a similar thing in regards to respect. Like, if you aren't raised to like have that, this is the way it should be and this isn't, then you don't really care about anything, and you'll talk to anybody any type of way. You'll take advantage of anybody or other things like that.
Well, here's another thing I was thinking about, because I was thinking about a society that respects their elders, because I feel like it all kind of connects and goes along with, I think, a lot of society today is like, almost like, we laugh about boomers, right? And we're like, they can't even work your computer. But in a lot of ways, they have more life experience and understanding of things, whether it was the Cold War or different systems of government or fixing things, that it's like we kind
reading a map.
Yeah, reading a map. It's like we just say, oh, they're stupid. Their ideology is outdated.
Yeah.
But when you really look at it, maybe they actually have an understanding of how things should be. They understand like the pros and cons of ways of the past, and sometimes new or the most revolutionary, progressive idea isn't always better. You know,
there's this interesting thing. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically like the faster that something comes on, like if something is a trend, if it came on quickly, it will go away quickly. Whereas like things that are like time tested and just tried and true will always kind of be there.
It's even like lifting though. It's like I always say like the basics work the best. Pull-ups, barbell rows, squats, lunges. And it's like, you know, you can come up with all these
superset
crazy
with the rope
ideas,
around the
superset,
dumbbell.
Banded this, that. And it's like, okay. And it's like, oh, well, Arnold just trained like a meathead and, you know, he did this and that. Sure. But it's like, that doesn't mean he was wrong.
Yeah.
Or that what you're doing is even more effective, you know?
Yeah.
It's almost just like total disregard for ways of the past. And I almost feel like, you know, a lot of, I don't know, I just go back to a lot of philosophers of like Greece or Roman times. I mean, this is like 2,000 years old, and I feel like they have a better understanding of like, of society and how things should function than we do now, because we're so focused on, you know, different things that you know we emphasize now that in the grand scheme of things it's like they're minuscule you know actual impacts to society or people's value of life and daily happiness. So
yeah, that is interesting. And I don't know, do you think that that comes from back then, like having less to do, or like the stuff that you did was more meaningful to you to where now everything is kind of automated? And then also there's things like football, reality TV.
Well, you know, I was just thinking about that. You know what I think it is distractions. Like you talked about earlier with like there's so many things that go on that you can distract yourself with, whether it's a movie or Instagram, this or that. It's like you think about these things that they're just like they're not reality.
Yeah.
And then but when you strip all that away, when you're just on farmland, when you're just you know, riding a chariot, you know, it's like you have nothing to think about except food, how people should treat one another, structures of society, architecture, you know, these different things. It's like, I don't know, a simplistic way of life. You almost learn a lot more about things that have direct importance. It's kind of like you living on a farm. You understand a lot more about like how important a washer and dryer is, and like the process of cooking or the process of these different things that you know they may have a direct impact and value on your life immediately. When sometimes the easiest, the quickest, simplistic thing you either take for granted or doesn't really add that much value to your life as much as you interpret to. Like you might think Netflix is super valuable to you, but then you realize, you know, this new, I don't know, tool in the yard actually helps you be a lot more efficient with harvesting crops or this or that, when that adds a lot more like actual value. And the other thing is almost like a time sucker.
Yeah, it's interesting sometimes that, I don't know, I feel like sometimes when we talk about things, it comes off as like morally superior. So I want to preface by saying like, you know, not to sound that way, but I feel like sometimes it frustrates me when I talk to people and like am really passionate about something I'm learning or I'm excited to do that's real. And their eyes kind of glaze over and they're just like, yeah. And then they tell me about, oh, well, on this show, like this character did this thing. And, oh, you haven't seen this show? And it's like, I don't care about that. Like that's made up and it's just like fast food
or
for
like
your
people
mind.
telling me like, you know, what they're doing on Call of Duty or, you know, how many shows they've watched.
Next year there'll be a new game.
Yeah, or even as simple as like, it could be as simple as money or like whatever you're investing in.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, money is important, you know, it definitely has value. Like, I'm not going to be against that in the slightest. But, you know, I feel like there's just a lost art of like, not materialistic things, but if there was a term I could think of for like, you know, just manual things, like manual skills, intellectual things that you can learn and grasp. Yeah, whether it's guitar or like, you know, just things that are real. I feel like we live in such a digital age where it's like people are more excited about gaining 100 followers or the likes they got on a post than learning how to bake a specific meal. Or you know, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting to just think of like how you fill your time and what that adds to your life. Because I used to have a friend in school that I would always kind of like get frustrated at him because I was like, have you been playing this? Like, have you been watching this? When I was more into that kind of stuff. And he's like, no, like I don't really do that kind of stuff. But then he would always talk to me about places he's gone or like stuff he's doing or like waking up early on a Saturday to go do this or like learn this song or go kayak this river or other things like that. And it's like, that's real. And that will give you a memory, that will give you a skill. Whereas like you fill your head with a TV show, none of that actually happened to you. And you get a false sense of like accomplishment. You get a false sense of conflict resolution, other things like that. So
yeah, it's almost like stevia for the mind. It's like it's not real sugar,
fake sweetener,
but it feels like sugar.
Yeah,
and I feel like, I think people just ignore like what adds true value to their life, or they don't really understand it. And who am I to say? But I think it's as simple as like Austin right now. Yeah, right. Sarah loves traveling, so it's like she does that. She spends a lot of her money in traveling. She travels often because that adds value to her life. It makes her happy when she gets to go to a different place or do this or do that. And I understand that a lot more than someone who just goes on a resort trip or goes to the Outer Banks again.
All you can eat cruise.
Yeah, because you're actually like, I don't know, you're doing something that everyone values things differently, but something that I understand because it's like you said, it's experience. It's a unique experience. It's a unique place. Things like that. What I spend my money on, or let's say us going to the gun range or something like that. That adds like some value and excitement to our life. For someone else, it might be a new video game. But at least with these like actual skills or things, it's like you said, I don't know, it's something that you can actually create or do something with versus these they're almost like food substitutes, but for your mind, where it's like a show or a video game. It's just it gives you those same sensations as a real experience, but it's not a real experience that you had. It's kind of like watching porn and having sex. It's like a totally different thing. Like you might get the same outcome, but you're not going to remember every time you beat off. You remember when you have sex.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a great analogy.
Well, I just wanted it came to mind.
Well, it's interesting too because like let's say for lifting, think of how much you've invested into lifting and how much that has taught you or skills that have translated into other facets of your life.
Yeah, that's now, a perfect way to put it.
If you were doing that with other things as well, think of how much more you would gain from that. To where like, it's just kind of.
I call myself out.
What?
Here's a good example. What do I need to do? I need to stop listening to, even though I love them, the Fuad podcast. I need to start listening to books while I run. Because then that's true. I can maximize my time. I can learn new skills, stimulate my brain more than just hearing them talk about, hottest fit chicks or like what muscle group they're training or what exercises, things like that.
That's true.
So it's, there's always places that we can improve. So anyone that's listening, we are perfect. No, we're not perfect, but but that's basically, I guess, what you can take out of it is, the more you can maximize these things, and I think gain a physical, or mental skill or hobby, I think is going to be more valuable and add more happiness to your life than you may realize than that new show, that new whatever.
Yeah. So some questions I got. One was spam, which love that. One was, what led you guys to find fitness, and what do you wish you knew then that you do now?
I guess I'll start.
Sure.
What was the first part?
What led you to
What led me to fitness? Being overweight. I was like chubby my whole life, and going into like 8th grade, I was like, I kind of want to make a change. And so my dad was like, hey, let's just go do these circuits of machines like 3 times a week. I was like, okay, I can do that, because that excited me a lot more than like running or the elliptical upstairs. So started to do that, and one of them was like a bench press. I was like, oh, every week you gain like 10 pounds, you're like, oh yeah, like I'm making progress. And then when you look in the mirror and you start seeing like the smallest line on your biceps, you're like, oh fuck. I remember showing this one girl who now is an Arbonne consultant. So
true fitness expert.
But one that turned me down multiple times. But point is, I remember in 8th grade, I was like flexing my arm, and I was like, oh yeah, like look at that. And
Yeah.
it was like the smallest line, but she was like impressed, and I was like, oh yeah. I
That's
was like, this
funny.
is happening. But yeah. But that's what kind of led me into fitness and kept me there was just you have like almost a quick reward system with like lifting.
Yeah.
Even if you're not seeing that weight loss immediately, at least you can focus on the strength aspect or the muscle aspect and things like that. And then what was the second question on that?
What do you wish you knew
What do I
then
wish
that
I
you
knew?
know now?
I wish I knew to stick to more basics and less complication, which I think I mostly did, but I remember I was like programming in things that I didn't need to do, whether it was Zotman curls or like a Zercher squat. I never ended
Yeah.
up doing some of them, but I was trying to just do too much. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just need the basics, like we said. And one thing I underdid, which I'm still correcting to this day, is like triceps. I would only do tricep rope push down. And I did like nothing else to develop my triceps, and so they were always lagging.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, for me, getting into fitness was because I always was very socially awkward. I'm kind of a weird person, and a lot of times in school, I wasn't like unpopular or anything, but I would just have a hard time getting along with people because I just had a really like
shooter
bad
alert.
self-image. So I would usually like look down at the ground if I was talking to people just because I would get very nervous. I had a lot of bad acne, like very skinny, other things like that. And also one of my front teeth, I had gotten hit in the mouth. So I had gotten a root canal. And so one of my teeth was always like darker than the other. So I've gotten it touched up since then, but back then it would just get in my head all the time. So back then I just kind of figured like, okay, well, I always would notice that if a weird person did something, people would laugh at them. But if someone that was like cool or more aesthetic did the same thing, people would laugh with them or like think it was cooler than it actually was, So it's one of those things that I always just thought like, if I can improve my like self-image or like aesthetics, then it doesn't matter if I'm socially awkward because people will look past that. If that makes sense.
I'm jacked.
Yeah, I know. So I started to kind of do that.
It's true though.
And then I would find that it would fall short. And I basically would only do like 2 workouts a week. One would be like chest and arms and the other would be arms. And the other things like legs or other things like that. At the time I was doing P90X. I just wouldn't care about.
Peak.
But it made me feel so good for like people to notice. I had my close friend from back then and still is. He was always more into like lifting or pull-ups or other things like that. And so when people would be like, "Oh, your arms look like his," I'd be like, nice, like it's paying off. So lifting is one of the few things I feel like that you do see a return on your investment that's like constantly changing, constantly improving, and doesn't take very long to notice. So it's one of those things that it took me a second though to figure out like what my overall goal behind this was, to where when it was something beyond just physical or like getting attention or trying to just change my appearance, is when it actually stuck. I would say is when I started to like write down, oh, I only did this many push-ups last week and then did this many this week, is when it kind of started to catch on, as well as more of a character thing of like, am I someone that pushes myself? Am I someone that has discipline, sort of thing? So that would be the biggest thing that I feel like kind of got me into it. And then also, what do I wish I knew then that I know now? That consistency, as well as like you said, kind of keeping the basics is more important than anything, because there have been so many times I feel like I've made some sort of program or like tried to overthink every little variable. And then I almost feel like that it makes me then worse because I'm like trying to do too much, as well as just being consistent, even if you're not going to be perfect at the same time. Like I would rather be consistent and not be right than be perfect, but only be perfect one day of the week. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what you're doing. Was there another question?
Yeah, there's another one. Some of these will be a little bit quicker to go through. How much water should we be drinking a day?
I always told you like a gallon.
I would say no water. Drink your own piss.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Recycle it. Was there a specific moment where you first fell in love with fitness, or was it a gradual build?
Gradual. Not much. I want to I'd just be rambling.
Yeah, I would say gradual. I can't really think of a specific moment, but I would say there comes a point in time. You know what? Maybe when I first started to like learn what a pump was beyond just feeling sore, because then you look forward to that feeling. It's not just like achy the next day. So that I would really say like within the first year or two of training, when I would like look forward to going to the gym for like 3 hours just to be able to like ride that feeling out. But and then did you have any?
Oh, well, I had one. I had one from a boy. It was, how do I get a girlfriend?
I'm not a good answer to that. I've only had one girlfriend, and that was at 22.
I forgot what rapper says it in one of the songs that plays here, but I think it's Nas. It says it's Meek Mill. If your mama loves you, don't ever get a woman. Because they're just more trouble than they're worth.
That's funny.
No, but
well, I've always heard you catch a lot of flies with honey, but you catch a lot more honeys being fly.
Oh, fuck, I like that. Yeah, clearly we don't have that much experience in that. Yeah. But man, I had one more question there that I'll pull from Fuad's podcast. I don't know if have you listened to the one with Nick and Guy?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe you've heard this question. Maybe you had time to think about it. Would you rather give up sex or training?
I was going to ask a different question from that the next time Austin was back. Yeah,
okay.
we'll wait for that.
Yeah, we'll wait for that. But sex or training?
Let's say I would rather give up sex probably, because
me too. People are going to give a shit. But here's my thing: is like sex is phenomenal. But for me personally, it's like at most what? You're having a great performance, 20, 30 minutes of your day, you know? And people aren't in a relationship. Sure, you have a time period where it's like, okay, you're like a jackrabbit.
If I can't train, then I can't get any.
Yeah, well, there's that.
What else do I bring to the table?
Training gives me like, I can do it whenever. I don't need a partner for this. Yeah. And I freaking I can get like 2 hours of enjoyment, like, every day. It's like it just adds more value to my life than just the moment itself. Yeah. Let alone it's like 4 times longer, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's like sex is phenomenal, but it's just I feel like I could be a happy person, but I mean just taking training away from my life would be like, oh God.
Yeah.
What do I do with these 2 hours of my day? There goes my physique.
Yeah, that's true.
You know? And I'm assuming training means no other sports, and I'm assuming sex means like no oral.
Oh yeah, let's assume that too. Yeah.
But let's assume you can do it. You can jerk yourself off. That's what they said in the podcast.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I'd probably give up sex, to be honest, because it's few and far between. Not gonna lie, I train every day. I have sex like once every year or two.
Once a year. Yeah. I save it for Christmas.
So it's not good. Well, maybe ask me that if I get into another relationship, and I might have a different answer. But you know, been a bachelor for a little while, so it's one of those things. Already gave it up. So I love training. You're
just locked and loaded for the next one. It's just gonna be like
it'll be like that scene in Scary Movie where you like blast her up to the ceiling.
You know, I had a friend that he side note, but I won't give out names, but he was getting like a blowy from his girl or something like that, or a hand job or something, and he literally from this like driver's seat, he literally came on the ceiling of his car. I was like, I thought he was fucking with me. I was like, no, you didn't, dude.
In the car,
he showed me a picture, and I'm like, bro, I mean, how much force do you gotta have for that? I mean, I
and in a compromised position.
That's what
I
mean. I mean, I can shoot at a distance, but not that. I mean, you're talking like 3 feet up.
Yeah.
He showed me. I was like, bro, did she like fucking run away from you after that? Damn. Like, what the hell? Like, what if that went in her mouth? It'd be like powerful. Like, holy shit. But headshot. Yeah. But anyway, side note. If anyone sticks around in this last part, they're going to be appreciative.
Yeah, enjoy the cherry at the end.
But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this wasn't too... hopefully it was bearable, even with our brains just flying around. But sometimes we'll need
get
Austin
more in stride when Austin's back.
Us in. You know, he like brings us in. He calms us down.
Well, it's difficult, too, I feel like. When there's 3 people, there's like no dead air. When it's 2 of us, if I stop talking, I feel like there's dead air.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's definitely when we have guests too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like someone always has something to say.
True.
But I think at the same time, just like Seth and Bob with their podcast, I think the more you do it one-on-one, you get in a rhythm and flow. But when we do like a one-off, it's like
true.
But anyway, let us know if you like the camera setup. If you're on YouTube, please comment and like so we know.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can keep this up. And share the podcast. Let people know what is up. And connect with us on Instagram as always. Brock Covington, and then Griffin is of course Vic Griffin. Even though he never posts.
I'll get back to it. This will be my year to do it.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
We're out.